Hi everyone, it's Maria, and today I wanted to talk to you about some resistance literature, also a podcast that I have really appreciated. A little background, my husband said to me last month that he felt like over the last few years, I started to change a little bit just because of how the political situation is, how frustrated I am with what's happening and what's not happening, and he said my language was starting to get not more spiteful, not towards him, but just whenever I talked about what was going on in the world, like I'm just angry. And he said, well, anger is useful. He really thinks that maybe it was starting to hurt my soul. And I think he was kind of right. I hate it when that happens. If any of you have a significant other who oftentimes is right, especially about you. And so I decided I would try and help myself. And of course, books is a great medicine. So I fell down that rabbit hole and it got bigger and bigger. So I wanted to share with you a few things that I have been reading or listening to that have helped. First thing I wanted to show you was the book Internment. This is written by Samira Ahmed. She also wrote Love, Hate, and Other Filters, which is a great book I read last year, I think. This is her second book, and it just knocked it out of the park. It is written about a Muslim American girl who is Indian, just like the author, and she and her family are put into an internment camp for Muslim Americans. You can definitely tell Samira's political bent because I think Donald Trump even is mentioned by name, and some of the things that have happened are brought up, so you can kind of see where she's coming from. But unfortunately, this narrative is not too far off from what could happen. I could totally see these things as plausible. But what I appreciated about it is that Layla in the book and her friends try and use nonviolent resistance to defeat the bad guys, basically, to defeat our government, which is frustrating that is the bad guy in this situation, but that's where we are. And I love that she and her friends use creativity and teamwork to kind of go up against what is oppressing them. I also appreciate she has a white boyfriend in the book, and so there's a little bit of talk about the complication between a deep relationship when you care intimately about a person who is suffering because of their color or religion. My sister is Guatemalan, her husband is Mexican, and their families are people who are targeted all the time because of their skin color. They're having to deal with a lot of this stuff, and I don't want to go, that's their stuff to share, but it is sometimes difficult as a white person because I know I can't understand where they're coming from. I don't know what it's like to experience the prejudice that I've seen them or heard about them going through. It's frustrating when I hear other people talking about undocumented immigrants or immigrants in general with disdain in their voice because those are people I love. And while I know obviously it's race issues, it's not about white people, but it's our problem because we created the problem. And I appreciate that she talks about it in here, and you're trying to figure out like how best to help, honestly, while also listening and respecting the person who is being oppressed. I ask questions about, is it best to dismantle the system from inside or outside? And I just really love this. It'd be a great book club read. It'd be great for older high school students. There is some violence in here, so just be aware of that, but I highly recommend the book. Samira Ahmed is somebody I'm going to definitely keep picking up. The next book that led to was A Strength to Love by Martin Luther King Jr. It is a short book, but I'm halfway through it, and I'm just enjoying reading some sermons he's written about nonviolent resistance and how to stamp out hatred with love. He brings up Abraham Lincoln's team of rivals in here, which I really appreciated because really the only way to destroy an enemy is to make them your friend and understand each other, and I love that. So that's another great one to pick up if you have not done that or if it's been a while. The next one, sorry, I had a Rice Krispie treat, is Fight Like a Mother by Shannon Watts. It's how a grassroots movement took on the gun lobby and why women will change the world. I really appreciated this book. There's a lot of facts in here. There's a lot of narratives, but it talks about this woman who's just a regular mom didn't have a side hustle at the time, but she got so frustrated she decided to start a Facebook group that has now expanded into a very big volunteer organization called Moms Demand Action for Sensible Gun Legislation. She gives lots of stats on here and lots of ways to actually work towards fighting the problem. And they're very clear that they are not anti-guns, but just for sensible gun legislation. There's so much I could say about this, but I really love that she's encouraging with her statistics. She talks about how it's actually an asset to be a mom and a woman and harness that power of social media and our voices and our mama bear rage to go up against something like the NRA, which seems to have such a tight grip on politicians. More marshmallow, sorry. I also really recommend the podcast Mama Bear Dares and their particular episode on Gun Culture 2.0 because there's a lot of crossover, but there's also a lot of differences where they're talking about the actual statistics. Things I didn't know about, like magazines and bump stocks, I'm now aware of, and how it's important to fight for restrictions on those, as well as fighting for background checks. 97% of people, including gun owners, are for background checks. Why is this not a thing? Because the NRA. But I just really appreciated all the things that they had to say. If you are unfamiliar with guns or you're somewhat nervous, sad, upset about the issue, I highly recommend that podcast, which I'll link below, as well as this book. It also just gives some great advice for how to be an activist in general on any issue. So I really loved that one. And the last one I wanted to share with you is Jennifer Chiaverini. Oh, I can't say that. Chiaverini, her book Resistance Women, which I've seen a lot of different places. She also wrote Mrs. Lincoln's Dressmaker, which was written about Elizabeth Keckley. I loved that book. I was really impressed by her historical accuracy because everything, I went back and read Elizabeth Keckley's book as well, and there's so much that she didn't deviate from the actual history, and I appreciate that in historical fiction because sometimes I get bummed out when I fall in love with these characters and find out that they're not real, especially in historical fiction. Jennifer is just really good at finding interesting historical people and then telling their stories in a way that is compelling and hard to put down. This book I'm only halfway through, but I have really loved kind of seeing the ties between this one and internment. You definitely see women who are frustrated with the rise of power of oppressors and prejudice and bigotry, and are using their place and time and in history to bring that down from within as much as they can. These are real people, real stories. I actually have Googled a lot of what I've come across and have been very impressed with the fact that she is spot on with the details. These things actually really happened, and you can kind of tell from how she writes that she's not seeing too much difference between some of the propaganda and techniques that the government is putting out now versus what happened in Hitler's regime. And I appreciated that, but also was glad to see some heroes stand up. So I highly recommend this book, and I will let you know when I finish it how it goes. So that is what has been on my mind lately. Again, if you get frustrated with the world, find a book and make it better, because we bookworms can definitely do some damage if we need to, and make things better with love. So I will talk to you all later. Bye.